Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Ball Over Passion. We've got new faces in the group, but not really a new face, kind of an old face, a good friend of the channel. We've got Nick at NSFTBL on Twitter. How you doing, mate? You good?
I'm good. Yeah, been a while. Been a while.
It's
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah, I
a
wanted to
while.
come. Yeah, I wanted to come on I usually come on after wins. I think it's the first time come on after a game we didn't win, but I'm happy to be back for sure.
Changing tides. Hopefully that's a sign
Yeah.
of changing tides for the team as well. And then we'll go to Chris. Chris, how you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Considering how we lost, you said we lost. Actually, we didn't lose, we drew, but it feels like a loss. But yeah, I'm good.
It
Yeah.
does. It does. The sentiment, I feel like that's just a perfect place to start. We'll just get off the bat because, we'll talk about the game and we'll get into it. But really, the explosion that I saw on Twitter was insane. And, just as, kind of, I sent a sarcastic tweet out there that kind of course, got the attention it deserved. But there was a big explosion about kind of Arsenal title chances, how good we are as a team. And I don't think it was from one or two. It was an extraordinary kind of like, I don't know, like a fear from the fan base. So I'll go to Nick first. Like, let's ignore maybe the Twitter ad revenue aspect. I think that there's going to be a more reactionary post to
Yeah,
just
for
things in
sure.
general on X, right? Because of monetary
Yes.
incentive. But like, there is an undertone of fans being unsure about the team and about what they've been seeing lately. So I guess from your perspective, why do you think that, the uproar was so big after the draw in what could be described as our most fluid attacking performance, what could be described as a frustrating draw, don't get me wrong, but there was almost more right than wrong in this game that we've seen. And yet there was a big reaction towards a draw. Is it outcome analysis? Is it the city stress? Is it the title race? Is this season going to get more stressful than last season? Basically, go for all of those
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. Look, I think it's mainly down to what you said in the end there, expectations. Obviously, if you remember last season at this time, it was like the best time ever to be an Arsenal fan in like the last 15 years or something, or even more. I mean, look, people, obviously, expectations are here. Obviously, last season, our expectation was top four. Like, I remember like 10 or 15 games in, even though we're top of the league, I was like, okay, we need X however many points to finish in the top four. Like I started thinking about the league title during the World Cup. Not even close to that earlier. So yeah, I think the weight of expectation is big. We obviously got a big experience of the quintessential City experience of like competing against them in the title race last season. Liverpool fans are definitely familiar with that. The entire hoping that they're going to drop points every week and then they edge it out in the end. So we are used to that, and it feels like every time we're going to drop points, the reaction is not going to be good because against that type of opponent, it feels like you're going to have to win like pretty much 30 games to get the title, which it's obviously extremely tough and not super realistic. So yeah, I think that's it. And also in regards to like not feeling good about the team part, I think that is down to do with the fact that we're not using the same setup as we're using last season. So obviously, I mean, to be fair, like most people are not. They want to watch the game, talk about afterwards on Twitter, and then get on with their lives. Like they're not nerds like us, breaking down every single aspect. So obviously, when you're going to see a new system, drop points against. I mean, I don't want to say Fulham are a bad team because they were decent last season results wise, but the underlying numbers have never favored them. Even so far this season, I think they've conceded like I don't know, like 9 xG or 8, and
I think
maybe that's a little too
6
much.
from one game, in expected goals too. Like they're
Really,
comfortably
yeah,
the worst defensive team in the league.
yeah, yeah, but they're not conceding goals, so that also happened last season. So I don't know. I mean, I remember watching their highlights on game week 1 against Everton. I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had Everton had so many chances, and in the end they got to go and won it. And it's kind of similar to what happened at the Emirates. So in regards to new system, draw points against a not so good team, there's always going to be a reaction, whether the result comes from the poor system, from a poor results that the system brings, or just from some unlucky moments, a big individual mistake, maybe a series of individual mistakes, like the first goal we conceded on Saturday. So yeah, I think. I mean, obviously, let's not ignore that. Even though we were good against both Forest and Palace and quite dominant in both games, the results were not comfortable. We were fighting until the 98th minute to get the 3 points in both games. So, obviously there are going to be some concerns given that last season at the same time we were not even struggling. I mean, to be fair, we did struggle against Fulham in the same game, but
Yeah,
obviously the thing that everyone's going to remember is the feeling they had at full time, and obviously it was an extremely disappointing feeling. I will relate to that, but I don't think it's time to lose all hope yet in regards to the title race.
absolutely. And you know what? We will definitely justify this statement because it's an important context. It's something I want to get off my chest about the fluidity of the performance. But I want to put that just to one side for the start. And basically, Chris, we're going to talk about the start of the season. Okay. And, I think this kind of comment by O'Malley, and thank you very much for your comments, guys, again. In terms of starting the season in the way that we started last year, there has been, in my opinion, a disconnect between what we've seen in terms of expectation, but also some of the numbers. And I want to set you up with this question. Do you believe that I think fans' perception of the start of our season compared to last year when we came out is purely to do with our performance in preseason and the optimism of that? Or is it because fans are unsure of what the system is and what predicting of the future this team is going towards? Whereas last year we had a very predictable, reproducible system that we felt we knew our 11, it was unchanged, and that gave confidence to fans. And before you answer, I wanted to read out some numbers just for context. If you were to compare the first 3 games of this season and last season, and the sentiment of fans was drastically different, but from a pure number perspective. So last year, we achieved 5.28 XG. This year, in the first 3 games, we've achieved more XG, 6.11. In terms of average possession in those games, last season it was 50.7. This season it's a whopping 67.3% average. Now, last season we allowed 43 shots, this season 48. So we've allowed slightly more shots and we've allowed. We've given more shots on target this season. We've allowed more shots against us, 6 more shots, in fact. But unfortunately, in terms of the goals, they haven't reflected it. So despite the greater XG, despite having more shots, despite having more possession, we have only scored 5 goals. And last year we have scored 9 goals. So in terms of just pure numbers, we are a lot more regression and underperforming, whereas last year we overperformed XG by over 4. And obviously goals, output, all this stuff helps in terms of getting results. But in terms of the actual numbers on the performance, the numbers don't lie. They actually show that this season's start to the season is better than last season's start. And yet the sentiment is really, really different. So what do you put that down to, essentially?
I think one, the expectations are different. We come in to this season being the team that has to chase City. It's not like last season where it was, if we get top 4, we'll be very happy. And also now, like, the squad's being used more. We said it last year; they didn't really use the squad. We knew what team would be used. We knew 100% Jesus is starting. Like, we had the same starting lineup for what, 25 plus games, apart from the Jesus injury. So we always knew, bar injury, this is what was going to happen. So, like, I think a comfort comes from knowing exactly what's coming. So then when you don't know what's coming and then something different happens, a lot of people fail to rationalize why it happened, what happened, like what can we change from that. Also, I think last season was never going to be replicated. There's less than 7 teams that have gone 9 out of 10 wins from the start of the season. Even the Invincibles didn't do it. Like, last season was our best ever start to a season in football history. So to expect us to do the exact same thing, to me, was pretty impossible. I was going into the season expecting at some point to drop points. I didn't think that game we probably deserved to drop points, but again, we created our own problems, and we'll get into that more. But yeah, I think people are just failing to get to terms with that. Gabriel maybe won't start. Maybe we don't see Jesus come straight back in like he did last year. Because Gabriel started, 73 straight Premier League games. He doesn't start the first three, and everyone's saying, oh, he has to be sold. But at the end of last season, not having the squad ready to be used when they were needed killed us. So I think for me, like, you have to use the whole team, get other players used to being in different positions. Because if, say, Ben White, who is never injured, but if he does get injured, Partey can play right back now. Like, well, not can, but I'm saying, like, we'll have ready solutions if an injury comes. Last season we didn't have that, and when Saliba went down, the season really went down with it. So for me, it's a mixture of both of what you said for me.
Yeah, and I think ultimately you're not going to point to one particular instance, one particular system that managed to cause the downfall. It was a multitude of things, but fundamentally for me, I think that the team's lack of flexibility and maybe Mikel's stubbornness in general is something that has hampered the team in moments and key moments, at least in terms of achieving our objectives. And I think that we've made a lot of progress, a lot of steps forward, but ultimately there needs to be a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more balance. And one of the biggest comments that I've been trying to coach on Twitter is that this idea about experimentation, it's really been the name of the game. Mikel's talked about it. We need to use the squad. And I'll go to Nick about kind of future plans, because I think right now the big question is, should we be upset at experimenting, or should we be upset at how he is experimenting? Because let's talk about the system generally in terms of evolving the team and what we're seeing right now. Like, do you believe the system that we're seeing now with an inverted Partey role is an evolution, or is it just switch dynamics of the same system as last year on different sides? Like, where do you stand on keeping the same fundamentals and moving forward into a different system, into a diamond midfield, something that, of course, I've tried to talk about on Twitter, but like, how do you see the same of last year versus us maybe moving forward and changing to a different formation?
Yeah, I mean, it's you kind of said it yourself. I mean, it is a different system, but it's not really a system with different principles. It's pretty much our system from last season, but the back four is changed, and we have a flat left back and an inverted right back, whereas it was the opposite last season with White and Zinchenko. And I mean, look, I understand that it hasn't been perfect so far, but like, also when people say that oh, he hasn't why change something if it's not broken, but at the same time Zinchenko was out. It's not like he refused to start Zinchenko and in the same backline. He had to change stuff. Like last season, when Zinchenko was out and we used Tierney and Tomiyasu at left back with pretty much the exact same system, I think we won most of these games, but we clearly saw that the left side, that dynamic was not working. Like seeing Tierney play in midfield between the lines was not a pleasant watch for me. I don't think for everyone else. So, and that's not an anti-Tierney statement. It's saying that when you don't have, because you can't have like two Zinchenkos in the squad or two Ben Whites. I mean, Ben White, I guess it's a profile that you could more easily replicate, but it's tough to have two versions of the exact same player in every position. And I think it also can be quite dangerous, because when things are not working, let's say in the future things are not working, and all of your backup solutions are played the exact same way as your starters, then you cannot really change your system if it's not working. So yeah, I have no problem with the system. It's clearly working as of now in terms of our metrics. We are playing very, very well, and in the Fulham game, it was probably our best performance. Defensively, I think it was probably passed, but like offensively, it's not even close.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the first game, yes, we dominated the ball, but like we scored two absolutely bangers out of nowhere, and we failed to create any other big chances. Whereas against Fulham, we could have scored 4 or 5 goals easily. And I'm talking about like easy chances. I'm not talking about Saka curling the ball from outside the box. So yeah, I think I have no issues with the new system. It's just that I think it's not ideal. The selections of the players is not ideal. Like, I think there are some points of the system, some areas of the system where I don't think the dynamics are working perfectly, and and obviously the right hand side, it has not worked as well as last season. There is no overlapping option. On the left, there is no real, with Zinchenko out. There is no, and Jesus out as well. There's no real player that can keep the ball and be a big playmaker of the left. I don't think it's been perfect so far, but I also understand the issue that Mikel is facing, which is playing the players that deserve to play, but also keeping balanced dynamics. It's tough because Odegaard definitely deserves to start. He's our captain, and aside from that, he was probably our best player last season. But he probably deserves to play. But Partey also deserves to play. Rice deserves to play. But if you want to play all those guys and Partey's at right back, Odegaard does not fit. He does not fit there. You have to have. I know. I'm sure George, you're going to get into it yourself, but you have to have someone that can overlap. If White is not at right back, if Partey is, it's hurting Saka. It's even hurting Odegaard himself. Or he wants to play Havertz because he's a new signing and he wants to give him time to gel. He also wants to play Eddie, who definitely deserves to start, but it's not working 100. It's not working 100% dynamics wise. You could even argue that he should drop Martinelli for Trossard if you're going to use that system, because Trossard is someone on the left who's a creator and more ball to feet. So I understand the issue he's facing, but at the same time, I have big complaints, and I think throughout his time here, we've had complaints about how Arteta has neglected balance at times and has played a right side with, just like right now, a right side with all ball to feet players and a left side with all runners. It is an issue, but at the same time, I understand that it is difficult to play the perfect dynamics on both sides without dropping some players that deserve to play, because like he's done it with Gabriel and there's already a big public reaction. You cannot drop Gabriel, Odegaard, Partey, and Jesus at the same time, right? And Zinchenko. You cannot do this. Like, you have to. There's also a squad politics,
Harmony.
dressing room politics, aspect. There's also the media reaction, which definitely has some effect in regards to, fans read this, players read this, managers read this. There's a lot of factors, and I think until Mikel gets the credit in the bank that someone like Pep does, like if Mikel wins the title this season, if he goes into next season and he drops like 7 of our 11 starters, no one's going to question him. He doesn't have that credit in the bank. So right now, everything is coming under extreme scrutiny. So even though I think he's not going things spot on in regards to balance, it is very, very tough to do. I wouldn't want to be in his place.
Yes, and I think that fundamentally how I describe this team is that we're operating at 60% potential. And some of that is due to the organization of the players. Some of that is due to Mikel himself. And a lot of it has to do, again, we kind of touched on it. We flirted with it, balance, and we'll address it head on. So, Chris, I'm going to give you my opinion, and then I want you to maybe give me your opinion about how you see balance being fixed. Because look, let's talk about the system, right? And one of the things that I've always talked about in terms of analyzing last season's symptoms of both success and failures is that when you talk about inverted fullbacks, this is the new thing. This is the new craze in football Twitter. But when we look at last season's kind of function, an inverted fullback meant that the same size central midfielder was the more attacking midfielder of the three. He was also the midfielder that wasn't necessarily involved in build-up. He was more involved in final action. And then when you looked at the opposite side, that opposite side midfielder had a little bit more flexibility, but second phase responsibilities. Now, when you switch the system and you make your inverted fullback Thomas Partey as opposed to Zinchenko, that role still has to maintain. And so for me, when you invert the right back, you force more pressure from your central midfielder on that side to overlap. Now, it doesn't have to be Thomas Partey, it doesn't have to be your midfielder, but there needs to be a dynamic overlap provided. And we can see the impact of having Thomas Partey do it. It's not great. We don't love it. It's not a zone that he prefers, hence the balance issue. Now, when you look at last season, when you look at Granit Xhaka, who was somebody that wasn't maybe used to that role, he provided a really interesting support for that. And he was very committed in making sure that those dynamics were set. For you, mate, like when you look even at the left hand side, we kind of flirted with it. There's a lot of runners on that side: Kai Havertz, Martinelli, um, you know, Eddie and Kedia. They all like to run into the same channels. And then when you look at it, that side is missing a passing profile. When you look at it, last year the right was Odegaard and Saka. What is the opposite side central midfielder there? It's Odegaard. It's a passing profile. And so if you're going to apply the same principles of this system, if the right side is your inversion, the left has to be a passing central midfielder option that has a little bit more second phase responsibility. But who do we have there? Kai Havertz. And right now, he's not involved in necessarily in those zones. But I think this is the fundamental issue that I'm noticing with balance, where each pod isn't balanced the best way it could. That's up to Mikel to choose. For you, do you believe that the stubbornness will change? Do you think that the reaction in the press conference with Kai Havertz, you kind of asked me that question, so I'll throw it to you on stream.
Mm.
We see the balance issues. We know we can appreciate that there's better balance that we can get. Do you feel confident that in the next game and in the future that we're going to see that balance corrected?
Well, when I asked you the question, I did say that the past 2 seasons, there's been a pattern that he makes the change once points are dropped, and we have drop points, so he probably will make a change people probably expect. All I expect is Havertz to be dropped, take the limelight a bit away from him, put someone else that fits a bit better, centre mid or striker, whichever one he chooses. But I do think we do a community shield lineup with just Zinchenko instead of Timber, and then Nketiah instead of Havertz. Drop Havertz out the team. Just one, to take the limelight away from him, but two, he was probably a bit behind the play. Like he looked like he was on a different wavelength to everyone else. Like when there was passes into the box that he should have met from Saka, he didn't meet them twice. One was a whipped back post on the left foot and he flicked it like with his heel or something. And the other one was across the face of goal. But I just think the balance on the left-hand side has always been a bit of an issue. Since we signed Havertz, we've always said that Havertz, Nketiah, and Martinelli doesn't make much sense because they all want to release the ball to someone else and run into the exact same spots. But Havertz and Martinelli really clash a lot, and we don't see them combine at all. Even though Saka and Odegaard, I don't think are the most complementary pair, at least at times they still combine. They play past with each other, 1-2s. They run off each other. Sometimes Odegaard would hold the width. Havertz doesn't do that. He doesn't want to do that. And Partey right back again doesn't make sense because he won't overlap. So then the gap between White and Saka, when Partey releases Saka, is too big to overlap. And I just think those little gaps, the timing will probably develop, but how long it takes to develop, I don't know, because the goal did come from us trying a new system. It came from Partey stepping into midfield, White going out wide and leaving a big hole in centre back, and Saka misplacing the pass. But if Saka misplaced that pass last season, Saliba's there to receive the ball. But this time, someone wasn't there. So for me, like, if he does do what I think he'll do, I think we'll look a bit better. But then again, I don't like the right-hand side with Odegaard and Saka. I never have, and I probably never will. I will always think there's a better balance if you take Odegaard and maybe move him to the left or just swap him for someone else on the bench. We do have various profiles that I think are a better fit than Odegaard. Vieira, Smith Rowe, players that are more willing to overlap. So I don't think he'll move Odegaard to the left soon anytime. But like the system I think is progressing. Like over the first, second, and third game, the progression is clear to see. Like offensively, we're a lot more fluid. We create more chances. We should have scored 5 maybe 6 versus Fulham, honestly, but we didn't. And I think we're going to continue to see us waste a lot of chances if this stays the same. But yeah, I know you're going to move into you saying Erdegaard to the left, so why not tell everyone why you want Erdegaard to play left center mid?
No, I would. Look, at the end of the day, it's been 25 minutes and we haven't talked about the game, so I'll save that. I've been here on BoP talking about this for so long, and fundamentally it's about just or understanding the balance. And a lot of people are annoyed about disrupting relationships. I want to challenge everybody both in the chat and on Twitter. We have to get used to people playing different positions, different roles, and it doesn't mean that it's an indication of them being a bad player or a horrible person. I think every single player in this squad has been asked to do a different role, by the way. When you go from Saliba to White to Partey to Bukayo Saka to, even Martinelli, Granit Xhaka, we have changed the positions of every single player, and our favorites need to understand that there's going to be a time to switch. And it's not even a switch, because I would argue, look at last season and understand the system. So if you're going to be inverting on the left-hand side of the pitch, your central midfielder is going to be a final action player. If you're inverting from the right-hand side 8 is going to be a final action player. That's the impact of essentially causing you to invert just behind with a fullback. That is the role. Now, if you switch it to the other side of the pitch, if last year the right-hand side had second phase responsibilities, then that means that now if you're switching the inversion, the left therefore carries more second phase responsibilities. And when I look at it, Martin Odegaard is a player, despite what I feel about him in terms of relationships, he is somebody that I think is one of the better second phase midfielders in this team. So when I look about being balanced between the two, it it lends to a point where you look at Fabio Vieira, everybody loved that cameo. And I'm sat here saying, guys, the quality of Fabio Vieira was always there. The reason that he did well is because the environment allowed for it. We put a passer on the side that lacked a passer and had all these runners. Of course, he's going to look good. So I think we need to get beyond names and we need to start understanding kind of the balance of roles on the pod. And you know what? That's the only thing I will say on it, because we do got to get into the game. And I want to set up Nick because there was a comment that I made on purpose about it being our most fluid attacking performance, in my opinion. And I'm just going to throw up some stats and I'll give some context. And then, Nick, I'm going to ask you kind of your first thoughts on the game. And then we'll go through kind of first half, second half as usual. So, firstly, what I'm going to throw up here is the field tilt. As everybody knows, I'm just going to review what the field tilt means. Essentially, field tilt talks about kind of possession in the final third and the amount of possession that is seen within the final third. And as you can see, the field tilt for Arsenal versus kind of Fulham was incredible. There was really only a period towards the end of the game that we really sacrificed kind of possession with Fulham. But for the most part, Arsenal were camped in Fulham's half. And beyond that, when you start to combine, it wasn't just possession in the final third, but have a look at the XG, which is really quite clear. Almost 3.9 XG to 0.8. We had something like 16 shots in the box. And so when I talk about it being a fluid attacking performance, this is what I mean about it being a fluid attacking performance. 16 shots in the box, massive XG, camped out in their half. For you, mate, like what was your big takeaways of the match, despite us not being clinical in both boxes, by the way, because it was a really poor goal to give up, but also a really poor efficiency of final action. What made you positive about, I guess, this performance? Because even you mentioned you felt like it was a fluid performance. So what about the performance did you feel was different from the last two games?
I don't know. I feel like, look, I think what I'm going to say, I think it is. So I think definitely as a side, we definitely tend to play to gain more urgency. As I think any other team, we gain more urgency once we concede. So if you look at all of the games, the three games in particular where we've conceded in the first minute, obviously it's it's in our home stadium. We're gonna get over the early shock. We're gonna attack. I think so. There is this context in regards that we basically started the game one down, so there wasn't enough time for the team to like settle into the game. So they went full throttle from the beginning, and there was some sloppiness. Yes, there was definitely, but at the same time, I think offensively we were like, I saw some bits and pieces where we had not seen so much in previous games. Like, I love those switches from the right to the left. They were really good, and that's the key to breaking down a low block, I think, or a mid block in the sense where
Hmm.
if the central area is packed and you cannot find your Odegaards, your Saka, all of those guys between the lines, what you want to do is like get a quick switch out wide, and we did that very well. I think it was mostly White, maybe Party did a couple of times, Rice as well. Yeah. Really, really nice switches, and those disrupted the team. I feel like we improved our quality of deliveries. Like, I think, especially the other game where we played against the low block against Forest, I feel like the deliveries were very poor in general. Like, we did not, when crossing, we did not really find the target. Whereas we could have had in this game, I think inside the first 30 minutes, we could have had 3 goals from crosses. It was Havertz, it was Saka, and I think it was a Martinelli chance as well. That might have been a corner, to be fair, but same principle applies. I think our deliveries were really good, much more purpose, more players attacking the box probably. But I'm not. Again, I haven't really rewatched the game, so I can't go into too much detail about things. But I really like the urgency and the big cliche, moving the ball quicker. It can be the case. Sometimes that's a problem, that you're being too slow to deliberate in your actions. And I think Arsenal aided in a weird sense by the fact that they were down. They were more fluid, quicker, more hungry to score. Whereas you go against Forest, which was a similar game, but we didn't concede the first minute. You saw we knew they were gonna be come to their own half for 90 minutes. So we sort of, I think we started more slowly, and there was more of a sense that let's keep let's I don't know, let's grow into this. Let's pass the ball well, get into a structure, and chances are gonna come. Whereas this time it was more urgent, and we attacked uh, quicker, with more intention, and those quicker actions, the quick switches, the balls in behind, um, finding the player who's spinning, the striker who's spinning, with back to goal. These are things that I think we have not seen so far this season, and I think this time it was better. But at the same time, it was a
Yeah.
little too sloppy at the time. Like the emotional factor, where it's become a boring media narrative, the fact that Arsenal are an emotional side. But I'm afraid to say it has been true, uh, especially post World Cup break.
Yeah, it hasn't been our controlled transitions since that January kind of the beginning of the year hasn't been excellent. And I think when you
Yeah.
look at it, the irony is in these last 2 games, of course, my favorite Declan Rice position about a 6 is being realized, and you're seeing the full potential of that. But look, there are
Yes.
certainly some things that we can kind of talk about in general because the team is evolving from there. The one thing is, we're going to talk about the specific incidences because I think we should have been 4-0. Well, obviously we got scored on, but 4-1 up by halftime, very quite clearly. And we'll go through each of the incidents. But Chris, for you, the first goal, we'll talk about it. Um, is there a discussion point about conceding early? I definitely had my own discussion in the group chat about that. But I want to kind of argue the point because it is true. We do concede early. We are sloppy, but I would even go further. I think that we're sloppy both to close and start halves in general, whether that's the second half or the first half. I think even last season, we had a period where we kept getting scored on within the first 10 minutes of the second half starting. And I think that in general, this team has shown to score within the first minute. And I think, there's been 3 times where that's happened, in the last 6 months. And so for you, A, who do you place blame on? And why is it Thomas Partey over Bukayo Saka? Um, but B, do you have an issue with us conceding early? Like, do you think it's more about just being focused and switched on, or is there a deeper issue in mentality of the players?
It's only at home actually we do
Yeah,
this. Away from home, we're the best team in the league, including Man City.
yeah,
Away from home, we've been the best team for a year plus now. So I think just when we start the game, the crowd at Arsenal are a bit more, how do I say it, like naive at times. Like they get frustrated very fast, but also like Partey moves into midfield, Ben White moves right to the right, and I'm about to pass to Saka, and Saka passes where the right centre back should be.
Hmm.
Partey, even though like he shouldn't do it, but again, it's all he's known. Like for me, like Partey shouldn't be in the position to have to step up from right centre back in the 50th second of the game. He shouldn't be there anyways, but he's been asked to be there, and throughout the game, that rotation became a bit more fluid. But that moment was awful. It looked like it was the first time ever they've ever done it. And the commentator just kept saying it like, it looks so strange. Party keeps going into centre back, then stepping like running away from it. Like he doesn't want to be there. White keeps moving to right centre back because he's now a right back. Like he's been a right back for a year. It's just natural for them. I'll move wide. I'll move central. That's really what it is. And yeah, Ramsdale for me did the right thing. Run to block off the far post, which is where Pereira was shooting.
Yeah.
He scuffed it. You can see no player in the world is going to open up their body from that far and curl it near post. He was running the right way, and if the shot was actually the correct shot, Ramsdale gets the correct save, and we praise him.
Mm.
But he shouldn't be in the position to be running from outside the box in the first minute, anyways. That's not on him.
Yeah.
And that goal wasn't in the first minute, but it was that 122. So it was the second minute. So I didn't like all the, all the pictures they were posting with we keep conceding in the first minute. But yeah, it's only really at home we do this. We don't start like this away from home ever.
Yeah, and for me, I don't place too much on it. I think look, we need to concentrate, and it's not something that I dismiss outright. I mean, it's happened, and it's happened more than enough that it's not just luck. And I do believe that there's a certain 10-minute spell as a coach. You should always, and look, this is something that I always tell when I was coaching, that the 10 minutes to start and end a half, I do not want to see a conceded goal. I do not want to see overt verticality. I want you to control the tempo of the game in the first 10 minutes to start and end a half. And I think that's really, really important. When in terms of looking at the blame, yeah, I'm with you. I don't agree with this Ramsdale blame, which I thought was incredibly stupid. It's people that just don't like Ramsdale and want to throw onto it. Clear, Andres Pereira was looking for the far post, and he in fact mishits it. Like if anybody that's played knows, like he's mishit it, but he's kind of shrugged that off. I think the rotation with look, allowing Ben White to be this overlapping center back and this kind of rotation where Thomas Partey will fill in at right center back to allow Ben White to kind of go up. It it is it's odd. I don't love it, but that is kind of the real frustration, right? Like the gears about understanding Thomas Partey steps when he really should hold, especially when Ben is wide. The one thing I will say is having a pass back at near enough the halfway line shouldn't result in a goal. That doesn't,
Yeah,
happen unless there's a structure issue. And so for me, that's as far as we can go. We know that it's poor, but we know that they're learning. And these are two players that haven't really played together in this iteration. And by the way, the DM dropping into the back line is something that I really talked about quite a bit on here at BoP for a while, but it's something that Rice has done brilliantly on his side. But that's because he's had Sample as a center back. He knows those switches a little bit better. And so the fluidity of that was something I expected. But Partey is learning it. He's never done that. He's learning right back. And by the way, I would argue, I don't know how you guys feel, but Partey grows into games because he's not used to the right back spot. Really
yeah,
simply, like I feel he's really poor in terms of a defensive positioning, but even sloppy at passes. But generally grows into the game, and throughout the game, I thought he actually did a lot better later in the game.
I
But
think
certainly to start, he struggled.
I think he's fine dropping in century. Like when he like last season, when he drops from central areas to the centre back, at times it's fine. But when he drops from right back, it's unnatural. It's unnatural for White as well to rotate to the right back like that early in the game. Usually he's already touchline, so it's just a weird thing for them to do. But before you move on from the way, I wanted to ask you both. Like we've conceded 3 goals. Um, all three have been either in the first 10 or the last 10. What do you make of that? Because it seems like for 80 minutes, we're very strong. Well, 70 minutes of the game, with not 70, 80, yeah, 80 minutes, we're very strong so far this season. But the last 10 and the first 10 have caused us issues. What do you guys make of that so far this season?
I think I think to be fair, the starts the poor starts, it's a weird one because it is understandable if you've ever played sports that you need You're never going to be at like 100% from minute one. It's not natural, and I don't think it makes
Mhm.
sense because you want to slightly grow into the game so you can peak for the majority and not just have a super fast start and then drop off. Which that's if you remember. I'm trying to think. I think in the season we finished fifth. In the first, if you remember, in the first half of the season, or in general in that season where we started so quick in games, and then in the second half we could barely keep the ball. So you don't want to do that, but at the same time, um, just conceding so early is absolutely unacceptable. It is unacceptable. Like there's a reason why games start 0-0 because it's tied in the beginning. It is absolutely unacceptable, and especially when you do it all the time against weaker teams, which are the games where you're supposed to to have a more comfortable day. It is unacceptable starting one down, and it's infuriating. And at this point, you cannot deny it's a pattern. Like since March, we've done it 3 times. Um, I it was funny because like my stream wasn't working in the beginning.
Mm.
Like it wasn't showing the game, so I log into the sofa score in the second minute, and it's 1-0 down, and I sort of expected it when I clicked on the game. I wasn't surprised. It's crazy. It's crazy.
And I
But
think the
yeah,
frustrating part is like when you look just as like an adjunct to what you're saying, even now to this day, Aaron Football, who's a great friend, kind of on Twitter, talked about the XG conceded, and Arsenal are second. We actually have pretty good defensive performance,
yeah,
but 2.89 conceded XG, that includes the stupid individual mistakes. And when you compare it
yeah,
to City that are at 1.33, like these are fixable. So that's part of the fan frustration that I totally sympathize with, where I'm like,
yes,
no, it isn't good enough. And then you compare it with, but really, how is our XG conceded so low still? Well, it's because the structure is good. Like the
yes,
structure is
yes,
good, but we need to stop these individual mistakes because it is unacceptable.
But if you
yes,
look at the
and
XG, the chances is our knee is a 0.6 XG chance.
Yeah.
Edward a header in the red card game, 0.4 XG chances. That's 2 chances in 3 games that add up to 1 XG. That's just not going to happen consistently. Like the red card isn't going to happen. And since the first game, no counter has affected us the way our knees one happened. So for me, like the XG and people saying, "Oh, Ramsdale's not helping us." Like the stat about him like being the worst keeper in terms of saving chances so far this season, when he's only made the third least saves this season. Like he hasn't been tested enough to make a difference for me. Like the goals we've had, he can't do anything about them. The
yeah,
goals we've conceded, like it was a bottom corner from 10 yards out. He can't do anything on the corner. The first goal was just mishit, and Awani was a perfect counter. So 3 goals that he's conceded for me, I wouldn't expect him to save it. He shouldn't have saved any 3. But yeah, like it's poor. We're hurting ourselves consistently. Like a lot of these chances that we're conceding really just come from silly mistakes. And once we do cut that out, then I'm not sure if we do concede, but that's just for the future. That's just for the future.
yeah, yeah. But I think that there's one thing more to be said about the at times where we've done this consistently. Under Michael mentioned that earlier. There is a tendency to go into retreat mode when it's late and we're up, which
Mm.
it makes sense, I guess. But when you have a team that is capable with the technical capacity that we have, it is. I don't think it's acceptable to sit back against 10-man Fulham. I don't think it's acceptable to sit back against 11-man Forest when we're up to one. Uh, and I understand, it's something that happens. Like even us, when we've in the past when we've played against stronger teams, in the end they're going to let us have the ball more. It happens, but if you want to compete against City, the thing that City do so well that everyone goes on about is no matter how many goals they're up, or no matter how good they are in the day, they always keep the ball in the end. Like when they're up, they keep the ball, and it's important. It's important. It's the cliche. The best form of defending is like not having to defend.
Mm.
Yeah,
Defending
and
with a
you know what
ball,
I think?
right? Like
I
Pep
think
said.
I think the real frustrating about it too is if you're going to have that mentality, we can have a discussion why that mentality is bad. But why don't you pair it with Gabriel coming on? If
Yes,
that is
yes.
your goal to come in, then why aren't you pairing it with your best box defender, who, by the way, simultaneously has an excellent set piece offensive potential? Like,
Yeah,
if that's going to be your play to sit and absorb pressure, why are you not having the best aerial presence in the
yeah,
back line to be introduced? Like, that's some of the frustration I think I have with Mikel, that broadly I might disagree with some philosophy things that he might do, but then the philosophy he chooses, he doesn't give the best platform for us to succeed in that way, because you're not bringing on your best aerial defender to do those things, to sit in. And I think that's a big frustration. Um, Chris, there's one thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to talk about these instances. I'm going to ask your opinion generally about the attacking fluidity. And I'm just going to remind everybody of these instances, because I've seen a lot of people still disagree about the attacking fluidity, even some in the comments. Let's have it right. In that first half, guys, Kai Havertz missed two open goal chances. Okay. There was one in terms of really early on with Bukayo Saka with his weak foot crossing, and Kai Havertz just delays the run to get there.
Mhm.
There's a slightly harder one in which Kai Havertz takes the chance away from Trossard from a long switch out from the right hand side, in which Trossard's behind. We miss that chance. There's an open goal header from Bukayo Saka that we do miss as well, which is shameful, of course. Beyond that, Kai Havertz has another chance to kind of get on the end of a cross that he doesn't quite get there. He's either doesn't commit once again. And then finally, when you look at it, the offside goal, which we then saw was disallowed, that also is something where Kai Havertz kind of delays his run just a bit. And I'm not doing this to kind of kill Kai Havertz, but I'm doing it to show there are about four chances there.
And
Two,
Martinelli.
and I was just going to say, Martinelli had three major chances, one difficult, but two other ones that I felt like he opened up and shot straight at Leno, and there was difficulty there. So when you look at it, guys, that's now six chances that I've done. Three maybe iffy, but two clear open goal chances that we absolutely did fluff our lines on. And I think that's just not good enough, right? Like that, for me, we should have killed the half 3-4-1 immediately. What did you feel about kind of the attacking performance? Because again, I was so encouraged by the level of switches. Nick, you mentioned it earlier on in the pod.
Yeah.
I love it. Here on BoP, we talk about this all the time, where if you're facing a low block, you need to quick switches to the underloaded side. So just the side that doesn't have markers after you've drawn them in. And we were doing that brilliantly. We were moving Fulham quite effectively kind of on the watch. And look, we dominated this game on the rewatch. And if you go, I urge people to go back that first half. If we're sat there with the goals that we deserved, we're saying it's one of the best halves that we've made, not just in the season, because it's only 3 games long, but in
Mhm.
preseason. It was a very good half, bar the individual sloppiness and moments from the goal. But even some players, like, there was times Odegaard, Saka, just kind of stopped attacks by just a poor pass. Partey himself, there's moments, but in general, we had almost, 4 to 5 significant opportunities that we squandered. What do you make of it? Is it something to worry about from an efficiency standpoint, or are you just more encouraged that we're able to kind of get this done in the first half?
I think the first half proved that we developed a way to get Martinelli open 1v1. Like versus Palace, after we were complaining that he wasn't really 1v1 with Ward in space a lot. Like obviously Palace have a smaller pitch, whatever. We still weren't able to create opportunities for Martinelli to be 1v1. And this time, like Erdegaard played a great pass. I think it was like first 6 minutes or something across the ground to Martinelli 1v1. Ben White, I think the big switches was very important in that he put Martinelli 1v1 very regularly. Like whenever Ben White had the ball, whoever was in the half space ran and Martinelli would be 1v1. So I think maybe his form comes into play a bit, like him getting, was it 4 shots in the first half? 3 on target. Like a lot of our shots came from Martinelli. And I think it's great that you're able to allow someone of that level to consistently have good shots. Like the near post shot on his left foot, he
Mhm.
delayed it, made the angle a bit smaller for himself, but it was a good save from Leno. But the other ones where he's cutting in and just shooting straight at Leno is just poor from him. And then Havertz, I think one of them was very hard for him. Like when Saka cut it back and he was like he flew into the
yeah.
air.
That was hard. That was a
That
chance,
was a
like
very
almost
hard.
Haaland. Yeah, that's like a Haaland and a
Yeah,
big Cristiano chance. It's not.
I wouldn't
I
expect him
don't
to
put too much
score that.
blame on him. Yeah,
But the
yeah,
other ones, like when Saka played it across the box and he doesn't even lunge for it. He doesn't even run towards it. Like, that's inexplicable for me. Like, he has to run onto that. Like, I think it would be very easy for him. Like, but even if you see it late, just die for it. But and then Saka's header was like
Yeah,
0.5. He has to score that at least. No, not
Hit it
even
on target,
yeah,
at least. But you have to score. Yeah.
have to score that type of chance. But yeah, that's just multiple. And then we scored. Havertz was offside, but we did score. So I don't complain about how we were offensively that game. I think we were very dominant. I think from like 10 to 20, started giving things transitions and away very easily, like 3 times. We led shots box. But apart from that, there was nothing about the whole game. I was very confident on scoring, even though we went 1-0, very confident with score. Soon, whatever. We scored straight away to the 70th minute. And
Yeah, so sorry guys, there was a little bit of a transformer there, but we'll get Chris kind of to return there because he's got an excellent screenshot. So Chris, go back in and out. But Nick, I wanted to end on kind of this major topic, which was really the Fabio Vieira of it all. And I think that you can't look. Now that you're here, I want to have a Declan Rice discussion, but I can't. We will put that to a different time.
Yeah, okay.
Fabio Vieira has to be kind of the topic of conversation
here.
Yes. Listen, go essentially. I was going to set you up essentially that, look, Fabio Vieira, for me, it's obviously a player I've believed in quite strongly. Everybody knows I've really talked about him quite a lot, even before we got Martin Odegaard. It's a player I've loved. I've always agreed he's had this potential, this skill, the ability. What do you make of A, the cameo, and B, have you learned something new, or is this just merely a balance thing that we kind of alluded to at the beginning of the pod?
I don't know. It's tough to say. On your last point, it's tough to say if it's a new thing or if it's like if it's his thing or the system thing. I don't know, but like he was incredible. Like I was saying after the game that we lost the 3 points, but we won Fabio Vieira. Like this is a sort of a defining cameo for him. This is the sort of cameo that Reece Nelson had versus Bournemouth, and it extended his Arsenal career. He gave that cameo gave him the new contract. That cameo could probably give Fabio Vieira a chance to start next week. He was that good. Like it was incredible, and it's something that is completely what he did is something that is completely foreign to the team. There is not a single player in there. Maybe sometimes when Saka gets greedy and he starts dominating, but other than that, no one really can do that thing where the assertiveness and that it was really that sort of feeling you get when you watch someone like a Bruno Fernandes, where not everything is going to come off, but there is that intensity and that relentlessness where he just every time he gets the ball, he looks to do something.
It's that final action efficiency. He's arguably the best final action in the squad. And it's that inevitability that you sit and you look like he will make something happen. But does he have the build-up? Like, did you see a certain difference maybe in his intensity and other things? Because we know he's got that final action. He did it on his debut in terms of the Brentford goal. Like, everybody can see the skill. It was in flashes. But I think most people's concerns with him was, what's the other part of the game? Like the 90% of that kind of other portion. Does he have the intensity to kind of hit it at this level? Like, what did you make of that in this game?
Yeah, to be fair, I think in preseason, Fabio was like one of the guys that quietly, it was a stock rising player for me with Fabio, because it's not. I mean, he got a great goal against Barca. Aside from that, I don't think he got any other big moments in terms of goals or assists, unless I'm mistaken. But I think he looked better in general. Like last season, Fabio, I'm pretty sure, I haven't checked the numbers now, but I'm pretty sure Fabio had like a pretty monstrous per 90 goal and assists number.
He did. It was almost every other game.
He got because like Europa League, he got a bunch of assists, a goal, a couple of assists in the Prem, a goal in the Prem. Like it seemed like every time, like every 40 or 50 minutes, he was getting a goal contribution. Granted, he didn't play much, so he's always had that. That hasn't been the concern. I think what he showed in preseason, he showed. I don't know what to call it. Is it intensity? Is it a lot of people were saying about him last season.
Adaptation, his first
Yeah,
preseason, like he's just
for
there.
sure. Yeah, that's one which cannot be debated. Like, but I was talking about how people have been saying that he should hit the gym. I don't know if that has been the case. He doesn't look like
Bigger. No.
visually he doesn't look bigger, but he does. Maybe it's a mental thing. It's confidence. It's I don't know. I mean, look, even I think the one thing that really surprised me preseason, Fabio played a bunch of right winger, and he did not look terrible. Whereas last
Mhm.
season, when he did, he was useless.
Mm.
Aside from like getting a couple of crosses in, like I remember there was a game, the Monaco game, the Emirates Cup. He wasn't really. The whole
He
team was
for
bad, but
performance, but he individually was one of the better
yeah,
players on the
and he
pitch,
was
yeah.
playing right wing. Yeah, he was playing right wing. To be fair, it was with Smith Rowe, which helped. Whereas last season it was with
Yeah.
Odegaard, I think, exclusively. But I don't know. I mean, it's very exciting. This is a player where he has forced himself into the debate, the starting lineup debate for United, and maybe United is a bit more of a. It's different because it's a big game,
Mhm.
so you're gonna have to maybe tweak the setup. But let's say we're playing. I mean, let's say the game after United, he's definitely. I think he should be in the starting lineup. Probably United too, but I don't. I'm not sure Mikel is going to throw him in the deep. He's definitely
Yeah.
a contender. He's definitely like the first player you're going to throw in if we need a goal, right?
Mm.
I guess between him and Trossard, who's usually on the bench, like these are the two players you're going to throw in if you need a goal.
Right.
I think there are some things that are similar. Obviously, Trossard is much more ball to feet, much more uh, comfortable with the ball, but there is when either of the two come off the bench, there is that feeling that they're going to make things happen. Whereas other guys are always slower off the bench. I don't know. I don't have anyone else in mind. Like Eddie, for example. Eddie, even though theoretically he should be a great off the bench option because he has energy, he has goal, he has movement, he never plays really. He never really plays well off the bench. I mean, he
Yeah.
did score against Fulham, but it wasn't exactly. He didn't come on in the 70th minute. He came on at halftime. It's a bit different. But Fabio looks like for now a great option off the bench, but definitely someone who should be in the starting lineup in the future. And the great thing about him is not only did he create 2 goals off the left, uh, with he won the penalty. That underlapping run, he has that in his locker. We need that. He did it, if you
Yeah.
remember, last season against Wolves in the final game before the World Cup, where he assisted Odegaard. He obviously had the brilliant delivery for Eddie in the second goal. But then shifting over to the right after we conceded, well, I think rather, yeah, after we conceded and Rice was taken off, he shifted over to the right, and it was honestly it was shocking watching it. Like his intention, there was a play where he had the ball, he gets by a player, and the ball was getting close to White. Like White should take it, but like Fabio's like, no, get the fuck out the way. I'm taking it, and I'm creating something. That's what I like to see. That's the Bruno Fernandes energy I'm talking about. Which it's not. Bruno is not a player I'm a huge fan of, but it is definitely something to admire when you're watching it, like the
It's that
intensity and the
authority of
greed and the hunger. Yes.
Yeah, it's that authority of the final action and efficiency. And in a team that has absolutely struggled at it, it's a breath of fresh air. And I think Fabio
Yeah.
Vieira, look, I will say my piece. I always felt that he's had the skill for it. I feel that you were able to see things a lot more because of the natural symmetry that having a passer on the same side of all those runners meant for him. There were still things that he did, by the way, but holding width and being able to send in those crosses, of course, people will point towards somebody that we just sent out on loan, but Fabio Vieira has always had the ability to kind of affect play from that area. It's just something that we're seeing right now in terms of the intensity of his actions are a lot more purposeful. He's less wasteful. He is knowing where to pass the ball and where to move. And I think last season there were times where he was caught in two minds about the action and then robbed of the ball. And that was a very typical Fabio Vieira kind of cameo typically. But here we're seeing a lot more authority, aggressiveness in terms of the actions that he wants to do. And it's just, look, it's a joy to see, and it makes sense. Having a runner and a passer behind him, it makes sense. So I'm hopeful that we're going to do that. Chris, I want to end on you on Eddie and Kedia, essentially, because another player that had a really bright cameo and another player that's got, look, there are the composure and finisher issues, but when you talk about a guy that comes in and constantly offers an impact when he um, gets a run in the game, and I think he's been slowly evolving. Eddie Nketiah, if I'm really being fair, has been one of our top performers, along with Declan Rice, who has been our top performer for me, but also Saliba. But Eddie is in that conversation to start the season. He's been one of our top performers. So for you, what did you make kind of the Eddie Nketiah cameo in terms of? I know it's something here on BoP we asked of the preview because I'm like, this is a fight. Fulham will be a fight. I wanted Eddie. I didn't quite see it, but in the cameo, what do you make of his cameo? Obviously, his finish very good, but I think he did a lot of other things also, not just the finish. That he really put himself about and was secure in a game that we really wanted a foothold. We needed somebody to play off of, and he provided that.
For me, going into the game, I always said I wanted Eddie just because of the Calvin Bassey effect.
Yeah,
I felt that before Eddie came on, Calvin, I don't know the numbers, but Calvin Bassey looked like he won every duel. Like whenever he ran into the back of an Arsenal attacker or a midfielder, he pretty much won the ball very regularly. And then when Eddie came on, Eddie just he couldn't deal with Eddie. He did end up getting the yellow card, the red card from Eddie knocking it past him and he bringing Eddie down. But yeah, I think Eddie's strength in duels is something we lacked through the first 45. I think his combination with Saka, surprisingly, the first 20 minutes of the second half was very strong. We probably could have created a lot more out of that. I think Saka, again, another player who grew into the game. But Eddie capped off like the goal I think he deserved for the first 25 minutes of his performance. He was in a good position, put it in the corner. So yeah, I think Eddie deserved the limelight this week because I didn't think he performed badly at all the first two games. I think he was very good versus Palace, despite not having the final action in versus Forest. Like he probably should be on 3 goals this season. Like he should have scored 2 versus Palace, and this time he got the goal, so he got the praise. So I think the only difference really between this performance and the Palace was that he got the goal.
Hmm.
Now you hear the praise and you hear, oh, Eddie should start next week. Eddie's worth 50 mil. Eddie's keeping Eddie and selling Balogun. Da, 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 da. So you hear the narrative around him change just simply because he got the goal. So yeah, I think he deserved the goal. Like his performance definitely deserved the goal, and just the strength, like the channel runs, like it was just very different to what we had. And he probably could have got the third. Like him and Jesus combined well in the box at times when they were both on the pitch, and we probably should have scored the third. Yeah, but I think it was nice for Arteta to make an early sub. We haven't really seen him do the halftime sub regularly. So yeah, well, Eddie being the one that he brought in instead of Jesus for me was good. That he's not forcing Jesus back in if he's not
Hmm.
fully ready, despite him keep saying that Jesus is ready. Oh, we'll see. We'll wait and see. Like he always keeps this air of unpredictability when he speaks about players. But yeah, it's nice to see that Eddie's still ahead of Jesus for now. Anyways, we don't know what happens versus Manu, but as of right now, Eddie looks like he's for me the starting striker.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that he's definitely got an opportunity for United. He's definitely, I guess, depending on the fitness of Jesus, but even without, I feel very comfortable with Eddie in the current form with United. But in general, guys, we'll tie it off. I'm going to address the point, and I think it's really quick. Look, Zinchenko, I thought, had a really great 15 minutes, but then the corner and then that kind of defending of the goal was really shambolic with him and Jorginho. It's poor to let in that type of goal. It's something that I don't want to ignore. But then we kind of addressed it earlier in the pod, where I feel like if Arteta is going to go into that low block stance, not putting on Gabriel, which is your aerial dominant presence, there is criminal. I think Gabriel there means the goal doesn't happen. Not that I think we needed to go and retreat, but if you're going to do it, supplement it with the right ideology. Put the players that you're going to go and defend your box with. And I think the frustrating part is even more so when we started to whip in. We had a lot of creative set pieces. We didn't really quite touch on it on the pod, but in general, we've done this new thing about drawing people out to create space in the 6-yard box, where we have this pod that's deep at the back post that makes near post runs, but it opens up a Martinelli or somebody at the top of the penalty box to run into. Look, it's great, but again, I ask, Gabriel is one of the best offensive headers that we've got in there, and so the knock on, if that's the ploy, why don't we put that? It's a frustration. I'm angry at Mikel for it, but look, we got to tie it off. Sorry, Chris, go
I was
ahead.
going to say on the ending, is stupid to retreat 2-1 up versus Fulham with a red card.
Yeah,
It doesn't
it's
make sense.
embarrassing.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that there's no reason, even if
Yeah.
we always retreat, we defend well in a block, whatever. You should keep the ball at home, 2-1 up versus Fulham from
Yep.
the 73rd minute. Like after
Yeah,
the Eddie goal, Fulham shouldn't touch the ball. Like you should
yeah,
make them run and run and run. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Like if you don't sit deep, the goal doesn't come. The ball's not in our half to lose if we keep the ball. Like we'd be on the
yeah,
half line. But yeah,
yeah. And just to piggyback of this, my final point, like even the craziest thing of all is that the personnel we have on the pitch at that moment is the personnel for us to keep the ball.
yeah,
We have Jorginho and Zinchenko
Yep.
and Kivio. Kivio, no, he wasn't on, but we have Zinchenko, Jorginho. Like our two build-up guys who are bad. Who are below average defensively. If those guys are in, why retreat? Like we don't even have Gabriel. We don't have Rice. I think. Yeah, we don't. Like all of our main defensive guys, aside from Saliba and I guess White, they're off the pitch. Like why? And don't even I keep remembering, I keep forgetting that they had 10 men. Like even with 11 men we should keep the ball.
Yeah.
Retreating against 10 men is it's I don't know, it gets me angry. It gets me very angry. I don't want to say things about Mikel that I regret. I still have them.
And on that note, listen, it was a lot to go in. I hope you guys enjoyed that. We're gonna do final thoughts. So I'll go to Chris first. Kind of final thoughts on the game in general. A frustrating draw, not a loss, but a frustrating draw. That for me, the story. I hope you guys could see through this review that was a little bit different than narrative, but still frustrating as a fan because we did ultimately drop points to a bottom league team, or rather a team that's maybe harsh on Fulham, but a team that you expect to beat at home. And that was something where you talk about Bournemouth that we lost, Southampton that we lost. Those are things that I think fans were going into this season hoping to see as an improvement. And then to have it so early in the season, you're frustrated to drop 2 points. And really, you have dropped 2 points. But what did you make of kind of the final thoughts, I guess, on Fulham and looking forward to United quickly?
I think the progression is clear to see, and if we continue improving at this rate, then I think the ceiling for the attack is very high. Defensively, I think we've been great all 3 games. The situations have been different in all games, but we've still managed to, I think, maintain a great block control and transitions for at least 80 minutes every game. I think there's always a little period where we lose concentration on and off the ball and we cause our own issues. But I think as the season progresses, we probably work that out of our game. It's been a year of us doing the same nonsense of conceding early and whatever. But yeah, I think from 20 to 80 were the Arsenal everyone loves, the Arsenal everyone wants to see, the Arsenal people think we'll challenge for the league, but we just switch off at times. So yeah, for me, I think we still look naive at times, but the progression is clear to see, even though I don't think the personnel has always been right. I think the squad as a collective looks better than it did at this point last season.
Yeah, and I guess just to tie it off, Nick, for yourself, mate, like what were your big takeaway for the match essentially, and looking forward to, I guess,
Uh,
United.
yeah. My takeaway is that I think it's time to go back. Everyone looks fit. Let's go back to Zinchenko and Gabriel. I think it's time. Not only it's not that Kivior and whoever else is playing and Party are playing badly. It's just it's going to make everything work. I think the one thing that no one has really mentioned, which is baffling to me, like I've seen people say that this system suits Havertz. I'm sorry, that's baffling to me. That's baffling to me. Like in the first half, I was seeing Havertz drop in at the double pivot. That
Yeah,
wouldn't happen if we had an inverted left back. Like this system, the Havertz debate. I could go on about 20 minutes about Havertz and like, what I hate about him, and the whole situation. That's for another time. But I don't love Havertz, but I don't think the system is getting the best of him. And I think the notion that it does is it's ludicrous. I think he's sort of being set up to fail in this system. And I think, our best game in months, he played up front with a proper midfield and a proper back four. I'm not so United is a good chance to do that. To do that, maybe I don't know. I mean, Eddie also deserves to start. He deserves to start up front much more than Havertz. But I think it's a big game, and we have to. I think we have to go back to what works. I mean, not that this hasn't worked, but let's go back to something that makes a little more sense balance wise and personal wise. And also the other main thing, I think the transfer window closes before that game, right?
It does.
So we're gonna have to see what happens. Uh, by the way, since the window is going to be closed, I don't think there's going to be an excuse to not start Gabriel. If he's there, he has to start. Like, there is no Saudi Arabia or anything. And let's also see. We didn't even get into transfers at all today because I'm happy about it. I'm very tired of transfers. Like June and early July was it was a nightmare with all of the sagas. It ended up well, but yeah. But there is that question if we're going to bring in a defender. So let's see. I'm very much hoping we will. There are no names out there right now, but that's my final note. That
Ivan Fresneda.
I hope we see someone in.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
he signed for Sporting.
Has signed for Sporting, and I am crying in the bathroom about it.
The saga is over.
It's over. It's over.
10 million pounds.
Don't even get me started, Christopher. But I think in general with this game, it's frustrating. It is frustrating on balance. My big takeaway was balance needs to be restored. I think we need to appreciate some of the fundamentals. Nick, when you talk about kind of converting back to the old system, one of the things that I think just works is Odegaard. Is he a second phase midfielder? Hell yeah, he is. And so if you're going to invert on the left, the right will become that. And then we know what kind of Ben White does with Bukayo Saka. It makes sense. You're getting players in zones that they prefer. The one thing that I'm interested to see is that at the expense of dropping Partey altogether, who I don't think is a midfielder that deserves to be dropped. But by balance-wise, is there redundancy between Zinchenko, Rice, and Thomas Partey? There certainly seems to be for there to be redundancy there. And then do you have a different block where does Fabio Vieira's cameo result in people thinking, look, maybe our box midfield needs him and Odegaard in there? And there are questions, right? I just think that with the return of the old system, Gabriel returns. I hope to see that basically our left 8 then is more of a final action player. And maybe that gives the platform for a Kai Havertz or a runner in general. But we need to appreciate balance a bit better because I still think that the Martinelli and kind of Kai Havertz potential on the same side is sticky. I don't think it's a chemistry that really works terribly well. I would prefer somebody that kind of overlaps with a bit more authority. But again, we've got kind of people in the squad now that are almost back fully. We've got Jesus essentially back. I don't think we've got really major injuries right now. And I think
we have one.
Well, Timber, of course, we all know of that. But I mean, he's kind of done for the foreseeable future. But beyond Timber, we don't really have many injuries. And I think fans just want to see the plan. That's the one thing I'll end on. I think everybody is open to experimentation, to versatility, and being like, look, I'm open to new ideas, Mikel, but I want the idea that's going to get us to win the league, and I want it now because I can't see what you're doing with the versatility, and I need to feel good about something I can't see. And so I think fans want that. We got a big game against United. We will be back with a preview for you guys on that. But firstly, I just want to thank Nick for coming on. Of course, you can find him at NSFTBL. Nick, do you want to shout out maybe any projects that you're working on and stuff that you want to shout out to the viewers?
For now, I have nothing, but I do have something in the works. Hopefully, in the next few weeks. So yeah, hopefully, I'm gonna have more news on that soon. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great, and hopefully, I'm gonna be back. I'm not gonna be away for as long as I was this time.
Of course, we always love having our Giorgio Samaros type 2 in here for us. But yeah, we appreciate that. Thanks, Nick. And then, of course, Chris, you can find him at CKFDBL. Of course, me at GeorgeV_AFC. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. You hit that bell for notifications. And you can find us Ball Over Passion here on YouTube or at BoP Footy on the X. I can no longer say the Twitter, so the X is the way it is. We thank everybody for you guys joining in. And we'll catch you guys in United Preview coming up later this week. So peace, guys, and have a good one.
Peace.